How's everybody doing today? Good? I just shocked you awake. It's like a post-lunch, everyone's digesting. I'm hopefully going to keep you awake. Hey, so nice to meet you all. My name is John Friedman. I lead design, research, incubation for all of our core Office product. So that includes, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Skype. If you didn't know Skype was a part of Office, it is. And so I guess you can direct all of your complaints to me about what you love and hate about Office, and I will add them to the queue of things we're trying to fix. But this talk is not really about Office. I'll use Office as an example, but this talk is actually really more about my career and my learnings. So it's a bit of a different kind of session than you've been seeing at Build around product. We're trying something new this year just to talk about what it takes to make product and what you learn as you're making product kind of along the way. So hopefully it'll be a fun journey. I'm going to start with F. Scott Fitzgerald. I came across this quote at some point in my career, and I've always loved it. I love the idea that, it finishes the quote. It's being able to hold two thoughts in your mind at the same time and not totally lose your damn mind, I think is the quote. It's something like that. And that's really, he says that's the test of first-rate intelligence. And so I'm probably like a third-rate intelligence. Just keep that in mind. I'm not a first-rate intelligence, but I'm working at this. This is I hope to get to second-rate intelligence. I don't think I can actually hold two thoughts in my mind at the same time. I think I actually just waffle between them really quickly. And it's somewhere in the middle, there's some truth that's not black or white. And I tend to like this idea. And I'm going to start the talk with two sets of opposed thoughts that I have been grappling with, and maybe a metaphor for that, in my career in an ongoing sort of way. And those two things are really, how many of you have heard the quote, you can't have your cake and eat it too, even though it should be you can't eat your cake and have it too. It's in reverse. It doesn't exactly make sense, except the idea is if you eat your cake, it's gone, and you don't get that anticipatory awesomeness of looking at great cake. And so the conundrum here is you can't have both. And so this poor baby here has eaten all of her cake and it is gone. And she no longer can anticipate that awesomeness of cake. And I have sort of a fundamental problem with this idea, this general idea that you can't have it both ways. And so I try to think about how do I break this rule of cake? How do I actually have cake and eat cake too? And so to me, it's pretty simple. There's always a way around something, right? You buy two cakes. These are little cakes. If you're frugal, you could buy little cakes. You could buy big cakes. It doesn't matter. I think you know where I'm going. You go to the local art store. You get some shellac. This is what bakeries do. You shellac your cake. You got one cake you keep forever, and then you eat the other cake. So I don't I get the concept, but I tend to believe maybe there's a way around things. Now, I want to be really clear about what I'm saying here. This is not advice. This is just I'm exposing some part of myself. I cut corners. I do. I don't want to talk about whether the HOV lane is actually for people with multiple people in the car or not. I just think there's a premium price you pay to drive it whatever you want. Hopefully there's no one from the Seattle Police Department here. I didn't admit anything just now. I just, for about $150 a year on average, I get to drive wherever I want, whenever I want. It's true. I just have to, every once in a while I get stopped and I have to pay the price, and I've got a great lawyer and it works out just fine. Would you pay $150 to drive wherever you want, whenever you want, a year? That's pretty good. That's I'd give up my Starbucks for that. That's awesome. I'm not anyway, okay, so you get the idea. That said, I've only been arrested twice. I'm just going to throw that out there just to try to help you understand where we are with this conversation so far. And the good news is I don't think I'm going to be arrested again. I don't really know. But the reason I was arrested, I think, is null and void now that the great state of Washington has legalized marijuana. So I just, this is a good thing. I think everything's going to be totally fine. Okay, so I'm going to start. Because we've talked about this idea of sort of holding two thoughts in your mind at the same time and sort of having your cake and eating it too. And so I'm going to start with the first chapter of my career. which I call 7 Years of Failure. And it all starts with my wife, Miriam. And I'm in my house one day, and I walk into my bedroom, and Miriam's on the computer. This is many years ago. Man, I don't even remember how many years ago this was. And Miriam jumps. You know when someone's looking at something on the internet and they're not supposed to be looking at it and they jump and you walk in the room and it's awkward and you caught something and you're not sure exactly what to do? This is what happened. Miriam jumps. And I'm like, okay, what is Miriam looking at? Oh, my birthday's coming up. Maybe Miriam's looking at an awesome bike for me. And she's trying to surprise me. That was like my really positive sort of view on what it could be. And then my mind went dark. Like, well, what if I jumped? What would I be looking at? Like, oh no. Miriam's looking at her favorite actor in a scantily clad sort of, I don't know, I'm not sure, Will Ferrell. And I don't know why Miriam loves Will Ferrell. I mean, he's pretty funny, I guess. But the picture I had in my mind, which I can't use here today, is, I don't know if you've seen the SNL episode where Will shows up on July 4th to really, in his little Speedo situation, American flag Speedo situation. Anyway, it turns out it was actually neither of these things. It was actually an article, I kid you not, called Microsoft's 5 Biggest Failures. And it turns out that 4 of the 5 things on this list, I've seriously looked for this article recently and I can't find it, but at the time, 4 of the 5 things on this list, I led design for. We have this, well, I'll get to the 5th one. Let's hold on the 5th one. Okay, so I'll start with the first one. I started at Microsoft as an intern, as an industrial designer. I've always been interested in where art meets science and sort of design and technology. And, I started as an intern. I was actually interviewing for this internship. I didn't even want to interview with Microsoft. I was really into Apple. I'm like, what, Microsoft? Why would I work for Microsoft? Like, they don't make cool stuff. And I met these amazing people 14, 15 years ago who were working on these smart personal objects. It was going to be the future of technology. There were going to be devices that weren't just your PC, and they were going to be all over, and they were going to be networked. And information was going to be delivered to them through magical subcarrier FM radio waves, and you'd get your news on your watch and all this stuff. And I got really excited about the future, and I joined Microsoft, and I was the industrial designer for the second, we called it a Spot Watch. How many of you have heard of the Spot Watch? It was called Smart Personal Object Technology. It turns out that wearables are never going to go anywhere. I'm not wearing like a Fitbit right now. And this whole smartwatch thing was, I would say we were ahead of our time. Bluetooth phones weren't really around. The smartphone hadn't taken off. We were doing this FM subcarrier thing. I have 10 patents on the antenna inside of this smartwatch that could be clad in metal and yet still actually get a good FM subcarrier signal because it had one plastic. The trick was one plastic link. Like that's how you needed an antenna for this thing. And the antenna needed to be quite huge. And so I have 10 patents that are basically useless. But it was pretty cool. We had a good experience. We learned a lot. We gave up too early, I would say. This is, it was a side project. Bill Gates loved it. He was interested in it was a wrist top, a computer on every wrist top. Taking this. I mean, that's exactly what he used to say about it. I believed in it, and actually, it turns out to be coming true now, which is interesting. It was a pet project, it was a side project. It was kind of not quite going where I wanted to, and at the same time, I met another team in the same sort of group of people that was interested in kind of moving computing forward. And I got really excited about this idea. I joined this team, and now we're talking like, at this time, I don't know, 12 years ago. This is long before iPad, long before iPhone. We were working on this thing called the Ultramobile PC. And we had this great idea. It was like this 7 to 10 inch slate device, super thin, instant on, always connected, capacitive touchscreen, nice and glassy, maybe like $400. It just sounded like a great idea. And so we had all these ideas about how to go do it. And we said, hey, Microsoft, we think this is the next wave of computing. We think this is really important. We need 300 people in 2 years. Can we go build this? And we heard great, this is awesome, let's do it. You got 20 people in 6 months. Windows Vista is launching. We'll get back to Windows Vista. Windows Vista is launching and go. And so, of course, it becomes like this resistive touchscreen, super fat PC, 2 hours of battery life, $1,200. I designed some really crappy software that ran on top of it so you could actually touch Windows Vista. And that was that. So I got a little bit, I don't know how many of you know what this is. I got a little bit depressed, and I said, okay, I know what I need to do. Like, I really care about creating the next thing, like the next new exciting thing. Hardware, software, services, brand. At this time, I had started to lead design teams. And so my failures apparently were creating some form of a success. That success comes in leading design in an engineering dominant company and bringing design and engineering together, but not yet in the product zone. And so I said, hey, if I go to the place where they make Xbox, and they go at it and they keep working on hardware, software, services, brands for consumers, I can succeed. That's the trick. Like, that's the learning. And so I joined this new incubation team inside of Xbox team. We were working on a social mobile phone. For those of you who don't know what this thing is, it was called Kin. It was on the market for a whopping 6 weeks. My mom bought one. I feel really bad about that. I think we sold like 8,000 of them. I'm not sure. My wife bought one. Everyone was really proud of me. And it actually was quite cool. Like, this was like the beginning of cloud computing. Like, the Kin phone had, the truth was in the cloud, truly. Like, if you actually broke your phone, if you dropped it in a toilet, you could log in again. And look, we all understand this with iCloud and Android, and this is sort of the way modern things are today. There's a lot of wonderful things about it. But, Windows Phone was sort of pivoting. Kin and Windows Phone kind of didn't have a clear strategy. Like, we brought the two things together. And at some point in time, it just made sense to sort of move forward with one platform. We wanted developers. This totally makes sense to sort of write towards one operating system and really think about it. We were a little uncoordinated and sort of had to bring the company together in some ways on mobile strategy. So anyway, before this actually shipped, I had done such a good job of funny to say I'd done a good job. I had done such a good job of building a design team and a research team and getting engineering, program management, design, research, marketing to work well together towards an end user goal that I was asked to lead the next big incubation that was coming out of the sort of same space as kind of Xbox and Kin and Zune and a bunch of other things. That project was called Courier. And I don't know if any of you know Courier. Courier never made it to market, but it was a dual screen digital journal. There was I don't remember, it was like a Wired article the day Courier got killed. There's a big RIP sign over this Courier image. And Courier was really cool. Like, again, we rebuilt a design team from the ground up. It was a little incubation project. I'll get to that. Why did it get killed? I'll get to why Courier got killed. It's really actually similar reasons for Kin, and it was actually, they're good reasons, but we were just a little bit ahead of our time and a little bit kind of off kilter in the way we had approached this inside the company. And so, Courier there was a lot of excitement around Courier. Courier was really about bridging the divide between the analog world and digital world. You look around and people are still using paper. I see people writing in notes all the time. I see people here using paper, and there's a reason for that. It turns out we identified at the time 40 million people in the US alone that were the creative class. And the creative class are not like artists and designers. The creative class are people who do lateral thinking. Mathematicians, merchandising managers, some teachers, like people who really have to think through things in a kind of an analog way to eventually start to bring their thoughts together and polish them and turn them into something that maybe others they could share with and others can build off of. And so we were really excited about this idea. We kind of went at it. You can see we're still working towards pen and ink. We're still sort of building this idea of bridging the divide. The reason Courier got killed is it was another side project. It was another thing we were playing with that sort of didn't have a clear developer story. It didn't have a clear sort of platform story. The user story was awesome, but between Windows 8 and Courier, we just kind of didn't bring those two things together. That critical sort of user experience story that really targeted what user needs were with the platform that we can build on in an ongoing way. And so actually Steve Ballmer came down we had this space called Pioneer Studios in Pioneer Square. It was on 1st and Jackson Street. And Steve Ballmer came down and actually talked to us about this particular project and when he canceled it and explained why he canceled it, which at the time I think we really appreciated. But it did decimate sort of a culture, and we sort of lost a lot of great sort of talent at the time. And it was a bit of a devastating moment for me in my career, because we had put everything into this kind of new startup thing. We had put everything we had into it. And so the fifth thing that I swear I did not work on this. I swear I didn't work on Vista. I do have at Microsoft, for those of you who know about this, for those of you who don't, we have this thing called a Ship It Award. It's kind of an antiquated concept. We should sort of move it to Love It Award, but we have this thing called a Ship It Award, and I got one for Windows Vista. So I was 5 for 5 on Miriam's Microsoft 5 biggest failures article, and I guess I should be somewhat proud of that in some strange alternate universe. Needless to say, I was lost, and I, for a bunch of months was showing up to work in a bathrobe and flip-flops, I think. I think I looked a bit like The Big Lebowski. I was a version of Jeff Bridges at the time. I had long hair and sunglasses, and I was moving kind of slow, and there were sightings of me on campus from time to time in which people would get lunch with me, and then maybe I would disappear for a period of time. And understand that this, the dude version of myself is a romanticized version of me. I think the actual truth is I looked a little bit more like a Sasquatch in terms of maybe, I don't know, cleanliness. I'm not exactly sure. But I was so inside of my own brain trying to figure out what to do with my career. How do I deal with this idea that every time we go build a culture that can build great product, and we think about kind of the holistic view, every time a product gets killed, and it turns out it's really hard to build a new product from the ground up. Like whether you're a startup or you're inside of Microsoft, it's just really hard to do. And you put your lifeblood into this. So anyone who does this knows this is a thing you put yourself into. And so I was trying to rationalize this thing of every time we kill product, we actually killed culture. We've got a question here. I'll repeat it. Oh, that's a good question. Are we being recorded? Maybe somebody knows.
Because usually some of the videos are being published afterwards, but it's quite inspiring talk. So
thank you. Good. It's good to get feedback while you go. I'm not sure. I do have a version of this talk. It's older. It's I could send a link out to it at some point in time. You can hit me up afterwards. But if not, I think it's something that I share from time to time, and I can certainly share a video that's been posted online from 2014. The ending's different, but the beginning is the same. I actually what's that? It always gets happier. It's just fun to start. It's like, have you ever seen 8 Mile? Has anyone seen the movie 8 Mile? So I love the end of 8 Mile when Eminem gets up and just rips on himself more than anyone can rip on him. It's my favorite scene. It's just I like the disarming quality and then sort of the truth that comes out afterwards. And so anyway, that's just maybe it's my personal style. The thing I was really struggling with, the shellacked piece of cake and the eaten piece of cake in this particular circumstance, the two opposed ideas in my head were, do I care about building product or do I care about the culture of design? And the truth is, in every one of those projects, I deeply cared about both. I think anyone could say the same thing about their own discipline. If you love engineering and you love building things and you're a maker, you love the culture of making, but you want to make something. And trying to decouple these things, I literally was these 4 months of walking around looking like a Sasquatch. I was trying to decouple, do I go to a design agency and I just go swoop in and tell companies some brilliant thing they should go do and then move on to the next project? Or do I really care about product? And if I really care about building product, do I have to sort of kill design culture every time we kill a new product? And this was a really challenging thing that I was grappling with at this time in my career. And this is about 7 years ago now, I would say 7, 8 years ago. So that takes me to my next chapter. And I call it low-hanging fruit. I don't know if it's exactly the right name for the chapter, but I change the chapter names from time to time. We've got a question here. I like the conversational. Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I get called out on this one. I was going to work and kind of showing up for a couple of hours. And I think inherent in that question, and you can confirm this, is is that okay at Microsoft or any company? This is a very good question. In some ways, I'll give general career advice just from my own personal experience that someone gave me around that time. And it was this guy named Jay Allard. And Jay led the Xbox team and built Xbox from the ground up. He was the one who really started that project. He also led Zune and a bunch of other things. And what Jay said to me when Courier and Kin, they literally got canceled the same week. That's the thing I forgot to mention. So the devastating blow of like the two projects that I felt like were my babies that I worked with a bunch of people and we made were killed at the same time. And he said to me, listen, go take as much time as you need, think about like what you want to do, and come back to Microsoft and just tell Microsoft what you want to do. And Microsoft will, they'll support you. And he relayed kind of what happened to him in Xbox. He was working on this thing called NetDocs at the time, which in many ways is like an early thought of Office 365, Microsoft 365, this kind of cloud-based productivity suite. And it wasn't working. He wasn't the right person to lead it. It didn't make sense. He took a sabbatical. He came back and I think he did what any self-respecting adult does on a 3-month sabbatical, and he played video games. And it dawned on him that the vision of where folks started out with Atari and early Nintendo was never complete in terms of interactive entertainment, and he wanted to take that to the next level. And so he came back with this gusto and passion. And he told me this story of sort of self-reflection, getting out of your sort of, the way I think about it now, getting out of your frontal lobe, taking a lot of space and time to think and let neurons in the rest of your brain connect. And then figure out sort of what's been standing in your way and kind of unblock yourself for what's next. And essentially that was his advice to me. And I took the time. And I openly admit it now. Like, I'm pretty sure, hopefully Don Coiner, who was my manager at the time, is not in the room. I'm pretty sure at that time, I think the statute of limitation is now over. It's passed. I think at that time I probably worked like 2-ish hours a day for 4 months through the summer, I do feel like I owe Microsoft a lot back, so I think I probably work a lot more hours now to make up for that. But it's really not in hours. Like the reason a company hires you, the reason you hire yourself to do something is really for your mind and ability to do better things over time and learn and grow. It's not for the hours you sit there and put in. And I do think this is a fundamental shift that's happening in the world of, I'll say productivity, but sort of human achievement. It's really about the joy and the ability to pivot and think and evolve and grow every day that gets the best work out of us, not the amount of hours you sit there and work. And that was a major lesson. Like the positive spin on my overly negative and self-reflective beginning of my story is that Microsoft is highly supportive as a company of the individual's ability to put themselves into their job. And there is patience at the company to give you the space and time to be the best version of yourself. And I take that lesson away to say we all have to do that for ourselves. That's kind of our choice. And in many ways, that's the permission Jay gave me at that sort of an impactful, important time in my life. And the aha that came out of those neurons connecting, the critical aha that happened there for me, was that I was stuck on the next new shiny thing. I thought exciting, sexy design was getting the next big thing. It was the next iPhone. It was the next, whatever was really cool at the time. I wanted to be like the inventor of that next thing that just blows up and changes humanity. And it turns out what's exciting about product design is not always the thing that's next and new that sort of gets humanity to shift or make some giant leap. But it's actually about making the things people use every day better. That's the real thing that matters. Because most people in their lifetime aren't going to have that, 0.01% opportunity of the next big thing that blows up in a generation. If you're a part of that, you're very lucky. You did all the right things, and you did them at the right time, and you were with the right people, and the market conditions were right, and you were lucky. But for the rest of us, fools like me, if all we got is to make the things people use every day better, that's awesome. And I'll walk through a little bit about how that started. And so I pivoted. I met this person. Hopefully he's not in the crowd. His name is. He's a VP of program management and product management in Windows Core, and he's probably at Build somewhere. And if you run into him, his name is Harv Bila, and This is just one of my favorite pictures of him. I don't think he knows I have this picture of him, and I use it all the time. So I do hope this gets shown to him at some point in time. When I was wandering around in a Jeff Lebowski kind of way, through my network, someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, Exchange wants to talk to you. Exchange is looking for a design leader." And I'm like, "Exchange? Who the hell would I work for? You guys know what Exchange is, right? It's a server software. Like, this is weird." But my wife Miriam, who I talked about before, she's given me great advice multiple times in my career. She did it when I was interviewing with Microsoft, or thinking about interviewing with Microsoft. I said, "Hey, Microsoft wants to interview me. Should I go interview with them?" And she said, "Yeah, you're not going to work at Microsoft, but you never turn down an opportunity to meet people." And so of course, 14 years later, we have never moved back to Chicago, and I live in Seattle. Same thing happened here. I said, "Hey, Exchange wants to talk to me. Should I talk to them?" She's like, "Well, of course you should talk to them. You're not going to go work on Exchange, but you should go talk to this Harvard guy." So I go talk to this Harvard guy, and he explains this human problem they have. They pivoted the business from server software to a hosted service. And suddenly, EDU, education, is picking up Outlook web app and the Exchange service, the early Office 365 service, for fifth graders to share homework with their teachers. In a world where at the time, iPads have launched and are starting to grow some usage, smartphones have changed dramatically, the iPhone and Android have come out and changed the world. And there's this companion app that was designed for an old school Win32 version of Outlook that ran on your computer. And if you weren't at work, you could log into your email, because you couldn't get email at home at the time, to get at Outlook Web Access. This is this thing. He said, "This isn't okay. We need that design stuff you do over in the entertainment and devices world. Can you bring that here to Exchange and help us redesign and rebuild Outlook Web App," or Outlook Web Access at the time? And it says, "Hey, yeah, no problem. We can do this, and there's a user that really matters, and we need to help them kind of connect teachers, students. I get it. Small businesses. This is a totally different thing. Across devices. This is kind of a cool." User-centered design project. I'm excited about this. And generally, I think this is probably low-hanging fruit. This is going to be easy to do compared to that that new crazy hardware, software services, consumer brand thing that we were doing. It turns out it wasn't actually easy at all. The next hard challenge for me was, how do you take, when we were working on the side of the company, when we were this is what I call flinging J. Allard's gourmet pizzas inside of a Burger King. It was cool in the corner to do whatever you wanted to do. But when you go into the core business of Microsoft, and at the time, I think Exchange was pulling in $2 billion a year or something like that, you're really responsible. And there were a bunch of engineers and folks who were not used to having weird people like me around. And I had to figure out how to build bridges in kind of new ways. And so I had to make space for design to come in. We had to figure out how to bring in designers and researchers. On one side of the house, I'm telling this engineering team, "Hey, no, it's cool. We're going to bring in these designers. I'm going to put them all in a room together. I'm going to invite you in. We're going to talk about soul of product." And then I'm telling these designers, "No, Exchange is awesome. Come to Exchange. We're going to change the world." I'm telling a story there. So, it turns out it actually went pretty well. We went through all sorts of iteration. We started mobile first. At the time. We had a thesis around HTML and web apps scaling from small screens to big screens. We were a bit early in our thesis, I would say. This was another little mini failure here that I'll get to later. But it did help to start designing for mobile first, thinking about designing, calendar and email across screens. These were early concepts. This eventually evolved into the Outlook web app of, I don't know, a few years ago, and sort of the roots of what you might see today in our newest version. But this went pretty well. Hundreds of millions of people were actually happier using this thing than the thing we had given them before. And we learned from them, and we listened to them, and we iterated, and we were making people's lives better. And at that point in time, something was still missing for me. I felt okay, I did it. I pivoted myself. I learned from the lesson of the shiny new object. But I felt this was incrementalism too. I'm really proud of what we did, but I also felt oh man, we could go so much further. The world of work is changing. People are more mobile than ever. There's so much we can do to help people save hours and minutes in their day. There's so much we can do to innovate in a much bigger way than just making a product appropriate for the current market? How do we lead more and not just sort of fix things? And that was kind of the next question. So is it about cool new products or just incremental updates? And this is the next sort of set of, I would say, opposed ideas that I had to hold in my mind. And that takes me to my sort of final chapter, pre-epilogue. This is the chapter that always changes, by the way. When I said there's a chapter this is the one that changes. The other bits are, but hopefully this one becomes more evergreen for me. I call it something new and something old, and I'll get started with something new. So when I came into Exchange and we started to build up this team, I ended up, because Exchange kind of turned into Office 365, and we started kind of expanding our thinking of being truly a services company over maybe a client software company, and we thought more and more about the cloud. I was given more and more responsibility over sort of Office 365. And in that process, we built sort of we needed continuous customer connection. Like, it was critical for us to know the real problems that were going on. Similar to understanding that students and teachers were using Outlook Web Access, we needed to understand what our customers were doing with Office 365 and how we could leap forward in some way for them. And so we built this panel of, we call it Compass. We've been running it for years now. It's a bunch of companies who are Office 365 enterprises, and we work with them. We work with their end users, we work with their IT department, we work with their C-level folks, and we work with them in an ongoing way, and we try to understand what's working for them, what's not working for them. And in that process, we were told by multiple different companies inside of Compass that we were designing products. They had users that had no use for our products, that our products were fine for the information workers, the people who sit at desks all day, but there's this entirely other class of user type that we started to call deskless workers, of people who, wait tables, are baristas, in all of these different verticals. And it turns out a lot of people in their, younger days have done things like waited tables, and everyone kind of understood this idea of, oh, yeah, there's actually this entirely other group of people that we should be designing for, that there are many, many of these types of people inside of the enterprises we sell Office 365 for. And we now call this person the first line worker. And the first line workers, it's the barista, it's construction workers, warehouse workers, airline attendants, they're in hospitality. Really, it turns out they make up a much larger portion of the workforce in the global population than people who sit at desks and computers all day. And we were entirely ignoring them. We had this we called it the K SKU at the time. It was a kiosk SKU for Office 365, so that baristas at Starbucks could go use some web terminal in the back of Starbucks to log into Outlook web app to get email, and that was the way that was the tool we were giving Starbucks Corporation to speak with and connect with their actual employees. And it was this huge aha moment for us, like we're totally broken here. And the numbers were staggering. Like Yum Brands, is Yum Brands up there? No, Accor Hotel Group's up there. That's a good example, but Yum Brands is one of my favorite examples. Yum Brands has a few thousand IWs and 1.6, 1.4 million first-line workers. It's amazing. And it turns out that when we would go and interview these people, this is a woman from Jackson Family Wines. I'll talk a little bit about her later. We would go and interview the managers, and we would interview the employees, and the processes they had to go through to actually figure out when they were supposed to work and what they were supposed to do were hell. It was actually horrible, and any of you who've ever waited tables likely knows this. You go in the beginning of the week, you take a picture of some board, actually one of the biggest tools they use is Excel, and it's so they can fill out the shifts for the week and then print them and pin them on a board like this. And so in the world of cloud computing and modern smartphones, people are pinning crap to walls still. This is a little bit like Courier. And they're using it for company policies. This is seriously, these are pictures from all these companies. It's about HR and wellness. It's get to know your coworkers. This is how modern companies, who are big companies who are succeeding, are able to connect with their actual employees. And they're all doing it. And they were doing three things: managing shifts, learning and completing tasks, and communicating with each other. These are not hard things for technology companies to solve. It turns out we have all the assets to solve these kinds of things. And so what we did was we just started to do participatory design with a bunch of end users. We started saying, like, hey, like, if we went after shift management, like, what would we do together? And we started sketching ideas together. We started working with different people across all these different verticals. We built a prototype. Engineering and design came together directly. This is a plug for engineers and designers working together. It's an awesome makers unite sort of way to think about things. And we just started, going through, like, okay, imagine there was a web experience for the manager. There's a mobile app for the manager and the employees. These things are connected. They automatically update. You don't have to ask your manager necessarily, to swap shifts with someone. Like, there's all sorts of things you could do, in a very, obvious way when you have the power of computing. And so we went through that process and we iterated on it until it was good. And we decided it was so good that we would fund an actual product team around this idea. And we funded a larger product team. And we carried that idea of participatory design and building with customers forward. And the Staff Hub team, Staff Hub is a product today, the Staff Hub team, to this day still, every single team member spends time with customers with the code they're writing, with the designs they're designing, and they iterate together. And so that birthed this product called Staff Hub. Basically, just example of Staff Hub, it allows you to, know your schedule every week. It allows for you to know what tasks you have, to swap shifts with people. If you're sick, you can find someone else to cover for you. There's all sorts of permissions you can set at the corporate level or the manager level. You can let employees just swap shifts on their own, or it can go through manager approval. Like, we've sort of worked through all these different use cases. If you work at Starbucks and you've done an end cap, you can take pictures of it and share it with the rest of the folks in your team. You can send it to another store sort of across the water in Bellevue. They know how to set up the end cap. And you build a community around people who can work together. It turns out, when we did the research, that somehow this is not surprising, that 94% of people that we did a research study on all had $600 and over smartphones. And they all made somewhere in the $10 an hour or less range. And so everybody has a smartphone. Smartphone is like, it's like, I think this is obvious now. It's like a phone is like water. It's like air. It's like internet to us now. It's so critical. And so we were able to leverage all of that and kind of build this new product. So enough of me talking about it. I think this is a video of the woman who manages schedules, manager in Jackson Family Wines. I think it's good to hear her talk a bit about this.
So the way that I use Staff Hub is to populate the schedule for the manager's end of things, and then my team gets to then utilize it to swap shifts. It really alleviates request time off, so I'm allowed to, instead of having paper copies in addition to a paper schedule and then populating it into an Excel spreadsheet, I get to just do it in one mass function, and it actually manually populates it completely for me, or automatically populates it all for me. Once a team member requests a shift off and I approve it, it populates it into the cell, and it saves me probably roughly on an overall scale for a month, it probably saves a week's worth of time in scheduling. So it's been an amazing application for both me and my staff members. Thank you.
What do they use the most?
They use definitely the messaging is something that they use very frequently, but just day to day being able to see what time they're working, what's going on that day for the shift notes or the day notes. So I would say that it's their communication for their schedule. It's how they show up to work. So their use of it is essentially getting paid in the end. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think it turns out there's two things people seem to care a lot about. It's time and money. Probably time first, money second, depending, from a baseline perspective. The idea that we saved somebody one full day of work per week, to me, is the most exciting thing, that we ever could have done. Like that, like shiny new product, save someone a full day of menial tasks to focus on things that matter more. I would take the latter any day now over the former. I think that's just this incredible thing that it's inspired me to think more about how do we save people time so they can focus, to not do the menial things, the things they don't love doing, to give them the time to do the things they love doing. Like, if she loved doing this, like, I once resurfaced a deck. You ever sit there and hammer nails all day? Like, it was really zen. It was really nice. If I want to do that, then I should get to choose to spend my time doing that. If I don't want to do a menial task, there should be ways that we can solve that problem for people using technology. So there's a question.
Software is available, or it's prehistory for something?
No, Staff Hub is out there now, and it's something we're building further and further into Office 365 all up to show up kind of in more places, and we've launched it and we've been piloting it with a number of companies and scaling it up over time. And so now we're looking at ways to sort of plug it in even more into the Office 365 service. And we continue to get back feedback like this over time. Okay, so that's a smaller scale thing that needs to grow, but it has huge user impact. This is something old, maybe rethought. Outlook. I mean, I've heard email is dead for years, and it turns out that email is still not dead. There's like on the order of billions of people using email on the planet still. There's been like every new modality is going to kill email, and of course chat-based UI is awesome, and iMessage and Messenger, all these things are great. And of course they are the more commonly used communication tools, but email has not gone away. It isn't quite gone the way of the US Postal Service, which is also still not gone away. But email usage is growing and it is high. The problem we ran into is we had a theory around the web scaling to mobile and scaling up from mobile. And that theory didn't pan out so well for us. We were a little early. And I would say like React-based, that kind of newer sort of web UI that you can scale down and get to work on mobile phones is not working exactly the way we had expected it to back then. I think now it's significantly better. But at the time, we had this huge hole on mobile Outlook. And people were using their phones more and more. At that point in time, mobile usage of email surpassed desktop usage of email. And so we had a problem. We ended up acquiring Acompli and Sunrise at the same time, two awesome apps that were highly crafted and well thought out. And we brought them into the Microsoft culture, and we sort of didn't stifle their culture. And this is one of the most successful sets of acquisitions I've seen at the company, and I've seen a number of them. We brought those two things together to build Outlook Mobile. And Outlook Mobile is one of the most highly used mobile email clients that exist, and one of Microsoft's best mobile engagement products today. And we took the greatest parts of Sunrise and the greatest parts of Acompli, and we pushed those things forward. We started scaling that thinking up. We rebuilt Outlook web app in React recently. It's significantly faster. We converged our enterprise and our consumer stack together into one common service. We did a bunch of hard work there. We started pulling the Office graph together and started to understand individuals and start to learn from individuals and their needs. And now we do things like time to leave to help you get to the right place at the right time. We have zero query search that actually helps sort of take all of this knowledge about you. This is kind of where AI starts to come in, right? We've built this service. We start to understand you as a human, and we can save you time. And we can bring the right things to you at the right time. And so zero query search is one of my favorite things. I just gave this talk in Tel Aviv like 3, 4, or 5 weeks ago, and some of my slides were actually in Hebrew. I ran into a friend who's an Israeli and translated them for me. And literally the day before I was going on this flight, I just clicked on my search inside of Outlook Mobile, and zero query gave me the flight. It gave me my hotel. I didn't have to go look for it. I knew it was there. It was there when I needed to. And Outlook started to save me time. And so by actually scaling Outlook across all these devices, by making it truly cloud connected, by modernizing it, by leveraging the sensors in my phone, and understanding me and building a knowledge graph around me, Outlook started to actually give me the right stuff at the right time. Okay, we're getting towards the end here. And so this is the epilogue. I've taken over Office design now. I have this significantly larger role than I've ever had before. I haven't been sleeping for months. I think I'm getting better now. I was so stressed out in the early stages. I lost weight in a way that I had tried to really hard before but couldn't. And I was like, damn, stress is the key. It's not working out or getting a new Fitbit, it's stress. I need more stress in my life. And so I've been reflecting on Office, this big concept of Office. This Office is like our productivity services that are designed for human achievement, that are reborn in the cloud, that are mobile first, that are web first, that are going to embrace voice and really think about how you can accomplish your goals in every moment that you need to, how we break down microtasks and make those things working, and how we leverage intelligence to get us there. And of course, when I think about intelligence, I love sci-fi. I go dark sometimes. I'm like, Hal, like, oh crap, like, Office isn't going to listen to. I'm going to like ask Office, like, when's my next flight? I'm sorry, John, I can't do that. I don't think that's going to happen to me. But as we've been thinking deeply about Office and intelligence, really, I think the truth in AI, and I think what most people really believe and understand, if we think about things ethically and we think about humans at the center as the most important sort of hero, is how do we empower people to accomplish their goals? How do we empower sort of human creativity? And how do we empower human collaboration in the next wave of computing? And I do think Baymax is a much better metaphor for what we're all trying to build when we think about sort of empowering humanity. There's this great video clip that I can't share because I don't own it, of Jack Ma talking about education. And it really, the question he was being asked is, what do we need to teach our children? And I think this is, as we usher in sort of this era of AI, this is a really interesting thing to reflect on and think about. The thing he says we need to teach our children are the things that are truly human. He says value, believing, independent thinking, care for others, teamwork. He says these are the soft skills we need to teach our children, right? He talks about sports, music, painting. As we all work really hard to leverage cloud computing, intelligence, quantum computing, what are we doing it for? We're doing it for humanity. We're doing it to inspire the next generation to be creative, to work together, to be truly human. The basic tasks that computers can do, they'll do for us. What we do next is what matters. And so I'll leave you kind of at the end of this talk with sort of, this thought. As makers across the board, our ability to truly be human-centered and take that approach of how do we make people's lives better every day? How do we help them do the things they want to do is our job. Look, I'm a designer. We're all designers. Anyone who builds anything is a designer. We are building for humanity. And if we keep that in our mind, I think we get Baymax over time. I think that's where things go. And so in my mind, I guess it's all about cake in the end. And can we have cake and can we eat cake? And I believe the answer is yes. I think there's ways around it, and you only get arrested a couple of times. Thank you.